I was the first person to stand when my husband was named Employee of the Year. I remember the sound of my own hands clapping before anyone else's, sharp and proud in that crowded ballroom. 10 minutes later, I was still sitting in the same chair, still wearing the same smile for the company photographer, while Daniel handed a $12,000 travel certificate to another woman. Not to me. To Claire. The certificate was transferable. Daniel could use it himself or give it to anyone he chose. It could have paid for the 25th anniversary trip to Tuscany we had postponed for years. Instead, he held the envelope out to Claire as if the decision had required no thought at all. She hugged him. It was not a long hug, 3 seconds, maybe 4. I counted without meaning to. The room erupted in applause. A man behind me laughed and said, "Now that's a true gentleman." Daniel never looked down at me. The ballroom at the Hyatt in downtown Columbus was full of chandeliers, white tablecloths, and soft gold light. People spoke more carefully in rooms like that. They sat straighter. They laughed a little louder when an executive made a joke. I had chosen my dress 3 weeks earlier, a deep green one, Daniel once said, made my eyes look like something from a painting. I wanted to look like the wife of a man who mattered. I also wanted to believe I still belonged beside him. When the MC announced Daniel Carter as Employee of the Year, I stood before the applause fully began. After 24 years, loyalty had become automatic. My body still knew what to do even when the rest of me was beginning to doubt it. As Daniel walked toward the stage, I thought about the years behind him. The nights I stayed home with Anna and Luke while he flew to St. Louis, Charlotte, or wherever the next hospital contract was waiting. The presentations I reviewed at our kitchen table. The doctors, administrators, and purchasing directors I introduced him to through my own work in patient care. Back then, none of it had felt like sacrifice. It felt like what married people did for each other. Daniel used to say, "When I make it, we make it." I had believed him. That evening, he had been drinking champagne since the cocktail hour. He was not drunk exactly, but after a few glasses his laugh had taken on that particular volume it got when he believed the whole room was on his side. Earlier, the CEO had called him the man who saved the company's most difficult account of the year. After that, people kept finding reasons to stop at our table. Someone refilled Daniel's glass before he asked. Another executive touched his shoulder and told him the next promotion was practically inevitable. By the time he stepped onto the stage, Daniel looked completely at home there. The MC handed him a plaque and a cream-colored envelope. "This year's prize is a transferable $12,000 travel certificate," she announced. "It can be used at destinations around the world, so Daniel, I hope you choose somewhere unforgettable." The room applauded again. For one hopeful second, I pictured Tuscany. Daniel and me walking through vineyards in the evening, finally keeping the promise we made when we were young, broke, and still thought 25 years sounded impossibly far away. He did not look at me. He turned toward a table near the stage. "Claire, come up here." At first I assumed there had to be a harmless explanation. Maybe she was accepting the certificate for the team. Maybe Daniel intended to divide the value among the people who helped close the account. Claire Bennett stood and walked toward him with one hand pressed to her chest. Her expression looked surprised. I remember wondering whether it was real, and then feeling ashamed for wondering. She worked in national accounts, not Daniel's department, but they had collaborated closely for nearly 2 years. Daniel waited until she stood beside him. This year would not have happened without the person who stood beside me through every late night, every failed proposal, and every impossible client. Stood beside me. He had used those words about me before. At anniversary dinners, at his mother's funeral. Once in our kitchen when he was exhausted and admitted he did not know what he would do without me. Now he said them to Claire. He held out the envelope. "You earned this as much as I did." Claire covered her mouth, accepted it, and hugged him. The applause came quickly. A man behind me said, "That's real leadership." The woman beside him answered, "Claire is lucky to work for someone who appreciates his people." I do not know whether anyone looked at me. I was too busy keeping my face together to check. The company photographer moved along the edge of the dance floor and lifted his camera. Whatever expression I wore might end up in the company newsletter beneath a caption about Daniel's generosity. So I smiled. I clapped. I made it easy for everyone in the room to believe there was nothing wrong. Then Claire opened the envelope and looked over the destination list. Her expression changed. Not surprise this time. Recognition. She looked at Daniel. "I still can't believe you remembered Tuscany." The applause had begun fading, but I heard those words clearly. Tuscany. The exact place Daniel had told me only weeks earlier was unrealistic, too expensive. Something we could discuss another year after Luke's tuition payment, after the next quarter, after life stopped asking so much from us. He had not forgotten. He had simply chosen who got to hear him remember it. After the ceremony, Daniel found me near the coat check. "Please don't make this awkward, Evie," he said quietly. It was a professional gesture. A $12,000 professional gesture. His jaw tightened. Claire helped close the account. Everyone understood what I meant. Before I could answer, Claire approached with the envelope tucked against her dress. "Evelyn," she said, smiling carefully. "You've been so generous sharing Daniel with the team all year." Daniel gave a small laugh. I looked from her to him. "I hope you enjoy the trip," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Daniel stayed to celebrate with the team. I drove home alone in the green dress I had chosen for his night. The house was dark when I arrived. I sat at the kitchen table without turning on the lights and opened my laptop. The formal job offer from Cincinnati was still waiting in my inbox. Director of Patient Care Programs, better salary, real authority, work I had wanted for years. I had already gone through the interview despite Daniel's objections. When the offer arrived 3 weeks later, I left it unanswered because he kept saying that accepting it would disrupt our lives. The deadline was midnight. At 11:47, I clicked Accept Offer. A confirmation appeared on the screen. I expected panic. Instead, I sat there in the dark and felt the room around me open up. I closed the laptop and placed my phone face down on the table. Daniel still had not called. That night he thought he had given another woman a vacation. He had no idea what else he had set in motion. To understand why that night changed everything, you have to understand what our marriage had slowly become. Daniel and I were not always distant. When we met, he was 26 and still rehearsed sales pitches in his car before walking into a client's office. I was already working in patient care coordination at a hospital outside Columbus. He was ambitious, but he was not polished yet. He listened carefully. He asked questions because he actually wanted the answers. We married after 2 years and moved into a small apartment with thin walls and secondhand furniture. The kitchen table wobbled whenever anyone leaned on it, but it became the center of our life. We paid bills there, planned birthdays there, and once spent an entire Sunday assembling Anna's crib beside it because the bedroom was too cramped. Luke came 3 years later. He had a lung condition that kept us moving between pediatric specialists for nearly 2 years. I reduced my hours at the hospital because someone had to remember the medications, the appointments, and which kind of cough meant we could wait until morning. Daniel and I made that decision together. One night, he held my hand across the kitchen table and said, "When things settle down, we'll rebalance." I believed him. I never stopped working. I moved into a more flexible position and took fewer hours while Daniel traveled more and moved into larger accounts. At night, he often brought work to the kitchen table. I helped him change sales language that sounded too aggressive. I explained why a hospital administrator might distrust certain promises and why nurses cared about things a sales team often ignored. I also wrote simple notes for him at home about patient follow-up, staff training, and the way hospitals evaluated new equipment. They contained no private information. I was only helping my husband understand the people sitting on the other side of the table. I introduced him to Paul Jennings, a purchasing director I had known for years. That introduction became Daniel's first major hospital account. Daniel did the work after that. He was good at his job. He earned his promotions. But he did not build the beginning alone. For a long time he knew that. At company dinners he used to point toward me and say, "Evelyn is the reason any of this works." Then he stopped saying it. The change was gradual enough that I almost missed it. He began telling the story of his early career as though he had opened every door himself. When new employees asked about his first hospital system, he talked about persistence, timing, and refusing to take no for an answer. He was not lying exactly. He was simply leaving me out. I never corrected him in front of other people. By the time we were alone, bringing it up felt petty. I told myself that I did not need public credit from my own husband. After a while, I stopped telling myself anything about it. Claire joined the company 2 years before the award ceremony. She worked in national accounts, a separate department that coordinated large hospital systems across several regions. Her job overlapped with Daniel's during a difficult expansion project. At first, he mentioned her the same way he mentioned anyone else. "Claire's sharp." A few weeks later, it became "Claire doesn't panic when a deal gets messy." Then one night while we were eating dinner, he said, "Claire understands what this pressure is like." That sentence stayed with me. Her name came up more often after that. The first late-night message arrived during a Sunday movie. Daniel's phone lit up on the couch between us. He picked it up immediately. "Work?" I asked. "Claire has a question about the proposal." He typed for almost 10 minutes. The next Sunday she called. Soon there were dinners Daniel described as team meetings. Months later, I would see receipts showing 2 entrees, 2 glasses of wine, and 1 dessert. He began dressing differently on days they had client meetings, better shoes, new shirts, cologne he had not worn in years. One morning while pouring coffee into a travel mug, he said, "Claire hates hazelnut. She only drinks dark roast." I looked at him. He remembered how she took her coffee. The week before, he had forgotten the appointment where my doctor was supposed to discuss whether I needed a biopsy. That evening, I finally said something. "You seem very close to her. We work closely together." "I know. I mean, it feels like more than that sometimes." Daniel set down his fork. "You are turning a normal professional relationship into something ugly because you're bored." Bored. I was working 30 hours a week managing the house, helping Luke with college costs, and checking on my mother twice a week. Still, he said it with such confidence that for a moment I wondered whether he knew my life better than I did. Around that same time, I was invited to interview for the position in Cincinnati. Director of Patient Care Programs. It was the kind of job I had wanted years earlier before flexibility became the most important part of every decision I made. Daniel did not congratulate me. "Cincinnati," he said, "that's 2 hours away." "I know." "So what happens here?" "We talk about it." "Who manages the house? What about your mother? What about Luke when he's home?" "Luke is 19. Daniel rubbed one hand over his face. "I don't understand why you need to turn everything upside down now." "Because I want the job." He stared at me. "You already have a good position." "So did you before every promotion you accepted." "That's different." He did not even pause before saying it. I went to the interview anyway. 3 weeks later, Cincinnati sent the formal offer that remained unanswered in my inbox until the night of the ceremony. The Tuscany conversation happened close to our 24th anniversary. We were in bed both pretending to read when I mentioned saving for the trip we had promised ourselves since our wedding. 25 years should mean something, I said. Daniel kept looking at his tablet. "Maybe someday. Next year is someday. We need to be practical, Evie." A few weeks later, I found a receipt from an expensive Italian restaurant in his travel folder. 2 dinners, a bottle of wine. "Client meeting," he said. I accepted the explanation because pushing past it would have required energy I no longer had. That was what our marriage had become, Daniel explained. I adjusted. After the ceremony, sitting alone in our dark kitchen, I opened our joint statements and read every line. Restaurant charges for 2. A hotel upgrade during a conference. A jewelry store purchase just under $2,000. A payment to a luxury travel service I had never heard of. Individually, every charge could be explained. Together, they looked different. The award ceremony was the first time Daniel embarrassed me in front of a room full of people. The bank statements showed me it had started long before that. I did not confront Daniel that week. I wanted to. More than once I pictured laying every statement across the kitchen table and asking him to explain them one by one. But I knew how those conversations usually went. He would answer the easiest question first. Then he would question my tone, then my timing, then whether I trusted him. By the end, I would be defending why I had asked instead of hearing why the charges were there. So I waited. I checked only what I had a legal right to see: our joint checking account, the credit cards in both our names, the calendar we shared, and the tax folders Daniel had asked me to keep because he hated paperwork. The jewelry charge came from a store near his office, $1,876. 3 days earlier, he had told me we needed to cut back on anything unnecessary. There were more restaurant charges than I expected. Several matched nights Daniel had called team dinners, but the receipts showed 2 meals, 2 glasses of wine, and 1 dessert. One dinner had been submitted as a client expense. There was no client meeting on our calendar that night. The Nashville hotel upgrade cost more than our mortgage payment for the month. The company had already paid for a standard room. Daniel had paid the difference himself. Then I found a payment to a luxury travel service. The money had come from our joint account and returned 3 weeks later, hidden inside a project bonus deposit. The balance looked normal again, but I could see the movement. I printed everything. The following Tuesday, I sat across from Rachel Monroe in her office near the courthouse. Rachel was in her 50s with silver beginning at her temples, and the calm expression of someone who had heard every version of "I never thought this would happen to me." She did not ask whether Daniel had slept with Claire. She asked, "What do you want to protect first?" The answer came before I could make it sound less selfish. "Myself." Rachel nodded. "That does not mean you have decided to end the marriage." I slid the statements toward her. "I don't know exactly what happened between them." "What do you know?" I looked at the jewelry charge. "I know he has been giving her parts of our life while telling me I was imagining things." Rachel reviewed the papers slowly. "Keep copies of anything you are legally entitled to access. Do not drain a joint account. Do not move money to punish him. Open a separate account for your salary when the new job begins. And before you confront him, decide what you would require if there is still a version of this marriage you would stay for." I left her office without an answer. 2 days later, Marlene Hayes called me. Marlene and I had worked together at the hospital for almost 12 years. We had started as patient care coordinators and later served on a committee that reviewed new equipment purchases. "Why weren't you at the signing?" she asked. "What signing?" "The monitoring systems contract, Daniel's company." I stopped beside my car. "Marlene, why would I have been there?" "Because parts of the proposal sounded like your work." She explained that the document had been circulated among administrators and committee members. The sections on follow-up care staff training and patient routines used the same structure I had developed years earlier. "Can you send it to me?" A few minutes later, the proposal arrived in my inbox. The language had been polished and rearranged. It was not a copy and paste job. But I knew the framework. I knew the order of the examples. I knew why certain details appeared before others. I knew because I had written the original notes at home for Daniel back when he still asked me what hospitals actually needed from vendors. They contained no patient records or confidential hospital information. They were simple explanations meant to help my husband do his job better. On the team page, Claire was credited with translating patient care needs into the proposal and helping build the strategic relationship. My name was not there. Marlene called again. "You introduced Daniel to Paul Jennings, didn't you?" "Yes." "Then why does this make it sound like Claire opened that door?" I looked at the proposal on my phone. "I don't know." That was not true anymore. I knew enough. That evening, I messaged Claire. "I saw the hospital proposal. I also heard what you said about Tuscany. I think we should talk before I speak to Daniel." She replied 15 minutes later. "What exactly do you want from me?" "The truth, if you can give it." She did not answer for nearly an hour. Then, "Tomorrow, 10 o'clock, the cafe by Riverside." Claire was already there when I arrived. Her coffee sat untouched between both hands. Without the stage lights and formal dress, she looked tired. She began before I sat down. "Daniel told me your marriage had been over for years. Our children are grown. He said you stayed together because it was easier." "That is what he told you. He said you lived separate lives, that you had stopped caring about his work." I placed the proposal between us. "This framework came from notes I wrote for him." Claire looked at the page. "Did you know?" "Not at first." "And later?" She looked toward the window. "He said the material was old. He said you wanted nothing to do with that part of his life." "That was not his decision to make." "No." Her voice was quiet. Then she said I knew parts of his story did not fit. I waited. "I did not ask too many questions," she continued. "I think I knew I would not like the answers." It was the first honest thing she had said. "You knew he still came home to me." "Yes." "You knew Tuscany was our anniversary trip." She swallowed. "Yes." I did not need to shout at her. She had already admitted the part that mattered. "You did not take my place," I said. "You accepted the place he made by pushing me out of the story." Claire's face tightened. She did not argue. That evening I signed the formal employment agreement from Cincinnati. I rented a small apartment near the hospital and paid the deposit from savings I had built over the previous year. Then I called my sister. "Can I stay with you for a little while?" She did not ask for an explanation. "Of course." At home, I printed the bank statements, the proposal, the job contract, and the apartment confirmation. I placed them on the kitchen table. For years, that table had held Daniel's plans. That night, it held mine. Daniel came home a little after 9. I heard the garage door rise, then the pause before the kitchen door opened. For years, that sound had meant the day was over. He would drop his keys in the bowl, set down his briefcase, and ask what was for dinner, even if he had already eaten somewhere else. That night he stopped in the doorway. His eyes went to the suitcase near the stairs, then to the papers spread across the kitchen table. My wedding ring lay beside them with the house key. Evelyn. I stayed seated. He walked closer and looked down at the bank statements, the proposal, the Cincinnati contract, and the apartment confirmation. What is all this? You know. He picked up the Nashville hotel receipt first. This was a work conference. The company paid for your room, you paid for the upgrade. It was the only room left. I slid the original booking confirmation toward him. He glanced at it and set it down. The dinners were work. Some probably were. They all were. One of them was submitted as a client expense. There was no client meeting that night. His attention shifted to me. You went through my calendar. Our calendar. He looked offended, which would have been almost funny if I had not been so tired. Then he picked up the jewelry receipt. This could be anything. It could. What was it? He said nothing. Was the bracelet for Claire? Daniel rubbed his thumb along the edge of the receipt. Yes. The word came out so quietly I almost missed it. Did she take it? No, she said it was too much. I returned it the next week. You still bought it. I know. That was the first thing he admitted without trying to explain around it. He moved on quickly. You are making ordinary expenses look worse because of what happened at the ceremony. What happened at the ceremony? I gave Claire the certificate because she helped close the account. You gave her the trip we had talked about for our anniversary. It was not our trip, it was a travel award. You told her about Tuscany. His voice hardened. So this is really about a vacation. I looked at him. No, it is about the fact that you gave her the truth, the praise, and the future you kept telling me we could not afford. His eyes dropped to the Cincinnati contract. You accepted it. The night of the ceremony. You made that decision without me. For a second I had no answer. The sentence was too strange coming from him. Then I said I spent years making decisions around you. This one was mine. Daniel pulled out the chair across from me and sat. You are going to throw away 24 years over Claire. I did not bring Claire into our marriage. Nothing happened. Then tell me what did. He looked toward the dark window over the sink. We kissed once. The room went very quiet. When? Nashville. The night of the hotel upgrade. He nodded. It was one bad night, he said quickly. It did not mean what you think. Then why did you pay for the room? Why did you buy her a bracelet? Why did you tell her Tuscany no longer belonged to us? We did not make plans. That is not what I asked. He looked down at his hands. We talked about things. What things? Trips, weekends. What life might look like if... He stopped. If what? If things were different. Did she stay in your room? No. I waited. No, he said again. She left. Did you want her to stay? He closed his eyes. Yes. That answer hurt more than the others because there was nowhere to hide inside it. Daniel stared at the table. I liked who I was around her, he said. I did not respond. She looked at me like I was... He shook his head. I do not know. Like I was still impressive. And what was I looking at? He lifted his eyes. You knew me? Yes. Maybe that was part of it. I leaned back. So being known was harder than being admired. He did not answer. I pointed to the proposal. You used my work. You used the relationship I built with Paul. Then Claire got the credit. That material was old. It was still mine. I thought you did not want to be involved. You never asked. Daniel stared at the page. I was going to correct it later. No, you were not. His face changed slightly. He knew I was right. I told him I was leaving the next morning. I would stay with my sister until I moved to Cincinnati. We would live separately for at least 6 months. I wanted full financial transparency. No hidden purchases. No revised stories after I found the receipts. If he wanted any chance of repairing the marriage, he had to end all personal contact with Claire, go to therapy, and tell Anna and Luke the truth without asking them to take care of him. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. What am I supposed to tell everyone? The truth, without making yourself the victim. I left the next morning. 3 days later, he came to my sister's house carrying the Employee of the Year plaque. I made the worst mistake of my life, he said through the door. I opened it only partway. No, you made a lot of choices. The stage was just where everyone saw one. He looked down at the plaque. I do not want this anymore. He set it beside the welcome mat and walked back to his car. I left it there overnight. By morning, rain had blurred the gold lettering beneath his name. The trouble at work did not disappear quickly. Daniel insisted Claire's bonus had been based on performance. He hired an employment lawyer and submitted written explanations for the expenses. For several weeks, he kept going to the office as though nothing had changed. Then finance began comparing receipts assignments and bonus recommendations. Another employee complained that Claire had received preferred accounts and travel opportunities. HR opened a formal review. 2 months later, the decision came. Daniel kept his job, but he lost authority over budgets and bonuses. The promotion was withdrawn. He repaid the personal expenses and was moved into a role with no direct reports. Claire returned the travel certificate and ended whatever remained between them. I did not see that as bravery. By then, staying close to Daniel had become more expensive than walking away. I was already packing for Cincinnati. The first weeks in Cincinnati did not feel like a fresh start. They felt quiet. My apartment had 2 bedrooms, though I only used one. The second became a place for unopened boxes, a folded ironing board, and the chair I kept meaning to move somewhere else. At night, the refrigerator sounded too loud. I would wake before dawn and reach toward the other side of the bed before remembering where I was. Some nights I missed Daniel. That made me angry in a way I could not explain. I missed the porch light he always left on when I worked late. I missed hearing him in the kitchen before I was fully awake. I even missed the way he complained about the thermostat, something that had irritated me for years. 24 years did not disappear because I had packed a suitcase. The new job gave me somewhere to put my attention. On my first morning as director of patient care programs, I stood in front of a conference room full of nurses, administrators, and department heads with a folder in my hands and my notes arranged too carefully on the table. I had spent so many years helping other people prepare for rooms like that I had forgotten how nervous I became when everyone was waiting for me to speak. My proposal was simple. We were losing high-risk patients after discharge because follow-up depended too much on who remembered to call and when. I wanted one shared process, clear responsibility, and a system that flagged people before they disappeared between departments. When I finished, there was a brief silence. Then one of the senior physicians said, "Why are we not already doing this?" A few people laughed. I did too, mostly because I could finally breathe. They asked questions. Some challenged parts of the plan. One administrator wanted the cost reduced. A nurse manager pointed out a problem I had missed. We worked through it. Nobody treated my idea like a favor. A month later, the first numbers improved. Fewer missed calls, faster referrals, better coordination with primary care offices. I stood in the hallway reading the report on my tablet and thought about the hospital proposal with Claire's name on it. Then someone called my name from the nurses' station, and I put the tablet under my arm and went back to work. I was no longer waiting for Daniel to acknowledge what I could do. Anna called one evening while I was unpacking the last box of books. "I need to tell you something," she said. Her voice had that careful tone adult children use when they are trying not to sound young. "What is it?" "I noticed things before all of this." I sat down on the floor. "What things?" "The way Dad interrupted you. The way he told stories about work and left out the part where you helped him. Sometimes he would say something at dinner and I would look at you because I knew it was not the whole story. Why did you never say anything?" I did not know if I was supposed to. I ran my hand over the edge of the box. "You were not supposed to fix our marriage." I am still angry at him. "That is understandable." "Are you—" "Yes." She was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you still love him?" I looked across the apartment at the empty wall where I had not yet hung anything. "I do not know what to call it now," I said. "But 24 years does not turn into nothing. Daniel did not use the children to pressure me. He sat down with Anna and Luke and told them what he had done. He said he had lied. He admitted he had crossed boundaries with Claire and used money that belonged to both of us. He did not tell them I had abandoned him. Anna said he cried. I did not feel satisfied hearing that. I did not feel nothing either. Over the next 6 months, Daniel went to therapy every week. He kept the smaller position at work. He repaid the money from our joint accounts. On the first day of each month, he sent a full financial statement without being reminded. He gave me space. Once he called and started to ask whether I had reconsidered. Then he stopped himself. "Sorry," he said, "that was not fair. It was a small thing, but I noticed." In the 4th month, a letter arrived. Daniel's handwriting had always leaned slightly to the right. The first 2 pages were neat. By the 3rd, several words had been crossed out. He wrote that somewhere along the way, he had started telling the story of his career as if I had not been part of it. At first, he said he knew he was leaving things out. Later, he began believing his own version. He wrote that Claire made things feel easy because she only knew the parts of him he wanted to show her. At home, I knew the rest. He did not turn that into a compliment. He wrote, "I think I resented you for knowing me well enough to see where I was weak." Near the end, the sentences became shorter. "I do not know if this fixes anything. I know saying sorry is not the same as changing. I should have told you the truth before you had to find it yourself." The final line had been written twice, as though he had started over. "I do not want to keep lying to you by leaving things unsaid." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. 6 months after I moved, Daniel came to Cincinnati. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. He looked different from the man on the stage. His suit was less expensive. His hair needed cutting. He kept both hands around his cup. "I thought your loyalty meant I could never lose you," he said. "You treated it like something guaranteed." He nodded. I did. There was no speech after that. He told me therapy had not made him feel better. It had made it harder to avoid himself. I do not expect 6 months to erase anything he said. Good. He gave a tired smile. I did not tell him we were getting divorced. I did not promise to come back. The truth was, I still did not know. We agreed to meet with a counselor together, not to recreate the marriage we had, but to see whether honesty had arrived too late. A year after the award ceremony, I went to Tuscany. My sister came with me. One afternoon, we walked along a narrow road above the vineyards outside Siena. The hills were green and gold in the late light, and the air smelled faintly of dry grass and stone. My sister stopped behind me. "Hold still." She took a picture before I could turn around. In it, I am walking away from the camera with one hand raised against the sun. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Daniel had sent a message. "Did you land safely?" I read it. Then I put the phone away and kept walking. That evening, I sent the picture to Anna and Luke. I finally made it. I did not explain whether I meant Tuscany. I did not need to. If this story reminded you of a time when you had to rebuild your life one choice at a time, share your thoughts in the comments. Someone reading may need to hear that starting over does not always feel brave at first. And if you enjoy stories about women finding strength without losing themselves, you are welcome to subscribe.